Being home alone as a kid feels safe, until the house starts making sounds it shouldn't, and you realize you're not alone anymore. I remember this night like it happened yesterday, even though I'm 26 now and it took place when I was 12. My parents left me at home for the evening with my 18-year-old brother, Zach. At first, I was excited. Being alone in such a big house felt like pure freedom back then. Zach told me he was heading out with friends for a few hours and made me promise not to tell our parents. I agreed. I trusted him, and honestly, who wouldn't want the house to themselves? He would have been in serious trouble if they found out, and he knew it. At first, being alone felt fun, especially on a weekend night. I settled into the den and decided to watch a scary movie while home alone. Looking back, that was a terrible idea. I'd never been alone for that long before, especially at night. About halfway through the movie, I started getting uneasy, not just because of the movie, but because of the sounds in the house. Floorboards creaking, wind brushing against the windows, the fridge clicking on and off. Every loud noise from the movie made me jump. I kept glancing behind the couch toward the half staircase that led upstairs, expecting someone to be standing there. Eventually, I couldn't handle it anymore. I didn't know why I was doing this to myself. I shut off the TV and ran upstairs to my room like a terrified kid running from imaginary monsters that chase you the second the lights go out. Once in my room, I rushed into the bathroom that connected my room to my parents' bedroom. I brushed my teeth as fast as possible, trying to calm myself. After that, I went back into my room and started playing Call of Duty Zombies on my Xbox 360, hoping it would distract me. I played for hours and completely lost track of time. Eventually, we died in the game, and I got annoyed. I figured it was late and decided to go to sleep. Not long after lying down, I felt the vibration of the front door closing. I assumed it was Zach coming home. I stayed awake, listening to the sounds of him moving around downstairs. But something felt off. Normally, he'd go straight upstairs. Instead, the noises downstairs went on for way too long. Soft footsteps, strange thumps, sounds I couldn't explain. My stomach started twisting. That stupid movie was getting to me. I got up and checked the window, expecting to see Zach's car in the driveway. It wasn't there. That's when real panic hit. I didn't have a cell phone. I was only 12. The only way to call anyone was to leave my room and use one of the house phones, which felt impossible. I tiptoed to my door and checked the lock, knowing it could be opened from the other side with just a fingernail. If someone wanted in, they'd get in. I scanned the room and realized the only place to hide was the small crawl-in closet built into the wall. I squeezed inside, carefully shut the door, and listened. I remember desperately hoping I was just being paranoid. Maybe it really was Zach. Maybe he parked on the side of the house. Seconds later, I heard someone fumbling with my door. Then it opened. Someone was inside my room. I froze, listening to footsteps moving around, the floorboards creaking under their weight. I heard objects being shifted. Every second felt endless. I was terrified the closet door would open at any moment. I kept praying it was my brother, barely breathing, hoping whoever it was would leave. At one point, I heard something being dragged across the floor. That made it worse. It felt like hours had passed, though it was probably only minutes. Eventually, the footsteps moved away. I stayed hidden for what felt like forever, probably 2 hours, until I heard Zach calling my name. His voice sounded angry and panicked. He came into my room and yelled again. I stepped out of the closet, and the first thing he did was shout at me, asking what I was doing in there and what I'd done to his room. That's when I knew for sure it wasn't him. I explained everything as fast as I could, shaking uncontrollably. Once he understood, we searched the house together. Drawers were open. Electronics were gone. TVs, consoles, someone had robbed us. Zach called the police immediately. We waited together, checking doors and windows. The police arrived, took a report, and told us to wait for our parents. Around 4 a.m., our parents came home. My dad was furious. He slapped Zach for leaving me alone and leaving the door unlocked. My mom hugged me and said she was just grateful I was safe. Zach had to pay rent from then on to replace what was stolen. I wasn't punished. I was just traumatized. Even now, I can still feel that fear. Hiding in that closet, listening to someone walk around my room, not knowing if I'd survive. It was the scariest experience of my life. When I was very young, barely kindergarten age, I lived with my grandparents. My parents had separated, and my dad lived in the next town. My uncle lived with us too, so I was rarely alone. I was always told never to open the door for strangers. We lived in a small town where everyone knew each other. Our neighbor, I'll call him David, was close with my grandpa and uncle. He drank with my uncle, helped with yard work, and even helped haul hunting kills into the shed. One night, I was left alone briefly. My grandma was at bingo. My grandpa went to pick her up and reminded me not to open the door. As soon as he left, the house went quiet. Minutes later, someone knocked. I asked who it was. David answered. He said he'd seen my grandpa leave. He said my uncle wasn't home either. Then he asked to come in. I said I wasn't allowed to open the door for strangers. He insisted he wasn't a stranger. In my child's mind, that made sense. I unlocked the door. David loomed over me, clearly drunk. He stepped inside, grabbed my shoulders, and wouldn't let go. His voice changed. He dragged me to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and threatened me. Then my grandparents came home. My grandma screamed. My grandpa charged in. David shoved me aside. My grandpa overpowered him and threw him out. Years later, my grandma admitted something felt wrong about that night. They never called the police. My grandpa went hunting that same night. David was never seen again. This happened a few years ago during spring break in 2020 when I was 15. My parents were out of town, and I was home alone one night, just hanging out in my room. Out of nowhere, I got a call from a mutual friend from school. I'll call him Mason. I almost never talked to Mason. We didn't text or call, so I was surprised and answered. Before I could say anything, he asked what I was doing. I told him I was just home, not really doing much. He then asked if he could drop off one of my buddies because the guy needed somewhere to stay for the night. The friend he was talking about was someone I'd known since 3rd grade. I'll call him Neil. I told Mason I didn't really feel like having anyone over and just wanted to be by myself. Mason immediately started begging. I could hear how desperate he sounded, practically pleading with me to let Neil stay. I kept saying no, until Mason told me he'd let me use his weed pen if I agreed. Looking back, that was incredibly stupid, especially considering what happened later. But at the time, I caved. I told them they could come over. Neil had always been outgoing, no filter, didn't care what people thought. So when my brother and a few friends told me earlier that week that Neil had been acting strange in class, I didn't think much of it at first. They said he'd randomly start laughing or clapping in total silence, or say weird things out of nowhere. One time, he claimed the basketball coaches were Freemasons trying to recruit him. That was when I realized something wasn't right. But I didn't understand how bad it was until Mason and Neil showed up at my house. I met them at the front door and greeted them like normal. I hit Mason's weed pen like he promised and handed it back. As Mason was about to leave, he suddenly grabbed Neil by the shoulders. His eyes filled with tears, and he begged him, not jokingly, not to do that thing. Neil stared at him blankly and casually said he understood. I should have asked what that meant. I didn't. Mason left. I let Neil inside. The first thing Neil asked me was whether all the doors in the house were locked. Immediately, alarm bells went off in my head. I told him they were and asked why. He asked me to check. I walked him down the narrow hallway by the front door and showed him that the back door and laundry room door were locked. After that, he didn't say anything. We just stood there in silence. Then, out of nowhere, Neil raised his hand slowly, like he was answering a question. He smiled, wide and unnatural, and held it there for several seconds before lowering it without saying a word. I forced a fake laugh, trying to make it feel less uncomfortable. Neil asked for water, so we went into the kitchen. As I grabbed bottles from the fridge, I noticed him lingering by the silverware drawer. I watched as he slowly opened it and reached for a steak knife. Without thinking, I ran over, grabbed his hand before he could pull it out, and slammed the drawer shut. Neil didn't react. He didn't pull away. He just stared at me and let out a small chuckle, like he was pretending it was a joke. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I was frozen. I had never felt fear like that before, the kind where your body knows something is very wrong. In that moment, all I could think about was how to get Neil out of my house. He finally broke the silence by suggesting we go to the neighborhood park. I agreed immediately, acting like nothing had happened. We walked to the laundry room door that led to the driveway. I let him step outside first and told him I needed to grab my shoes. As soon as he was out, I shut the door locked it, and called my brother. I explained everything as fast as I could. After the call, I grabbed every knife in the kitchen and carried them upstairs to my room. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was high, but I knew I couldn't let Neil back inside. My brother showed up less than 5 minutes later with 3 friends. They met Neil outside while I stayed inside, shaking. A few minutes later, I went out too. Neil was rambling nonstop, saying the school's basketball coaches were part of the Illuminati and that they were assaulting players to make them better. None of it made sense. We decided to get him home. There was no chance I was letting him stay. One of my friends drove him, even though Neil insisted he couldn't go home because he believed his dad was trying to kill him. After everything settled down, I called Mason and demanded to know what happened earlier. Mason explained that Neil had been reading a manifesto in the car. He believed he had to kill himself, or someone else, to stop his father from killing him. Mason panicked and just wanted him out of the car. Later, we found out Neil had taken drugs that triggered schizophrenic episodes and auditory hallucinations. To this day, I still think about what could have happened if I hadn't stopped him in the kitchen. That thought never really leaves. I was 10 years old. My mom went grocery shopping and I begged to stay home. She finally agreed. I was playing basketball outside when I looked up and saw someone watching me from my sister's upstairs window. I ran inside and yelled. A voice answered from upstairs. It wasn't anyone I knew. I ran back outside and called my mom, crying. She came home with the police. They searched the house and found nothing. That night, I woke up and saw a tall figure standing in my room. I screamed. The man ran, opened my window, and jumped out. To this day, we don't know how long he'd been inside the house or what he did while I slept. That's the part that still haunts me. I don't tell these stories to scare people. I tell them because they actually happened. And somewhere, there's another kid alone in their house right now, thinking they're safe.